Good evening. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Fans Only Sports Network. I am Adam Wright alongside Nicholas Carlson. We have a special guest with us tonight and making his return to the show after over a year of not being with us, Brian Mucker. So, Brian was a co-host for us. If for some of you OGs out there who may have been listening to us from the beginning, you would know Brian was one of our co-hosts before he left the show. So Brian, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice night out, hanging out, doing some work. Finals week, a little busy, but we do have a great show for you tonight. We'll talk about Brian's Jets and who they should draft. As you may know, Brian is an avid Jets fan. We will be talking, but let's start with the breaking news revolving around Deebo Samuel. So, 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel has requested a trade from the 49ers after failed negotiations about a contract extension. So he's been rumored at a lot of teams have been rumored to have interest in this player, such as the Chiefs. There's been the Packers. There have been even the Jets. So where do you guys think he should end up?
Well, I mean, we were just talking before the show. The news broke that Deebo took down his tweet stating that he was unhappy with his contract in San Francisco. The negotiations didn't work. And later on, after that tweet was posted, someone tagged him saying that he would look great in the Cowboys silver and blue with a star on his helmet. And he liked the post at first, and everyone was going nuts about it, saying, oh, he might be happy with going to Dallas if they can give him the right price tag. However, as of 25 minutes ago, he took down the tweet and he unliked the post that was in regards to the Cowboys. But I mean, if he was to go to Dallas, I think that's a great spot for him. They definitely are a team that has the cap space that can fit him. But I think the Cowboys are already a little deep in the depth chart for wide receivers. If I had to pick a team to send him to I would send him to Carolina.
That's an interesting one. Brian?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick, about the Carolina sequence. I think he would fit great in silver and blue and black. They do not have a lot of depth in wide receiver. The only wide receivers that we really know of that are standouts are Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. I think that instead of addressing it in the draft, that they need to go out and get receivers like Deebo Samuel. Maybe if they're interested in Metcalf, because I know Metcalf wants out of Seattle, but Deebo would fit perfectly maybe in Carolina. He obviously said that he would want to be utilized more as a wide receiver instead of what he was last year, even though he had a monster year with San Francisco. Turned out to be one of the top 10 wide receivers in the game. I could also see him going to other places like Indianapolis, where they do not have a lot of depth at wide receiver. Michael Pittman's like literally the only one there. Zach Pascal recently departed to Philadelphia. And I know it's like a long shot, but if he wants to do this, reunite maybe back with the Jets, hopefully maybe the Jets have the cap space. I don't think they might even do because of what they've done this offseason, which I loved so far. But it could make a little bit more sense due to their reunion with Coach Robert Saleh, who was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers back in 2018, I believe. And his former offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur, is also in New York. So I could see him going to either one of those three destinations. There's probably other teams like the Cowboys, but I just think he might just be an Amari Cooper replacement.
So regarding the Panthers, I think that I just don't think wide receiver is in their needs right now. I think they're set with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, and I think they can get a wide receiver 3 just for depth anywhere. But a team that really needs him, who really needs a wide receiver 1 to complement what they have, is the Green Bay Packers. I think Green Bay has a little bit of money from all the cap space that they've cleared up. And that's a team that really desperately, after losing Devontae Adams, needs Deebo Samuel. And I think Deebo's play style could work very, very well with Aaron Rodgers. It could force him to play a little bit more of a conservative play style, whereas he tends to just kind of go for the highlight reel, deep ball play. I think this works great for him. Deebo Samuel, I think that's a match that would work very well. And dare I say, they could be better than they were before. Whereas, before they were kind of just relying on Devontae Adams alone, they would be using Deebo for sort of the intermediate plays, and then they also have Sammy Watkins to huck it down the field. It would be a great fit for them. I think this would work.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I think maybe Deebo could be a great fit in Green Bay. One player that I think you forgot to mention was Alan Lazard. I feel like he's always a sleeper on that offense, but yeah, I think Deebo as a number 1, he can be really good. Even though he doesn't want to be utilized like he was in San Francisco last year, I think that's how he should be used if he were to go to Green Bay. Watkins, I know, is always a deep threat in every team he's been with, like Kansas City in the playoffs. He was with the Ravens, and he was always a deep threat with Buffalo, as we would remember him his days in Buffalo as a Patriots and Jets fan. But yeah, maybe that could be a great fit for Deebo.
Yeah, the only issue is he has, according to reports by Adam Schefter, he has said that he doesn't want to be used as that wide receiver running back hybrid. He wants to be used more as a traditional wide receiver. That doesn't mean you can't use him primarily designed for yards after catch plays, but he could, that is something to look at, because when they used him as a wide receiver, he did not have the same production. So I think he might be a little bit full of himself to be saying, well, I don't want to be used this way. I can understand why he doesn't want to get, because there's a reason why running backs don't last that long in the league, because taking all those hits when you're a ball carrier, it's not good for you, and it often leads to injury as time goes on. And Deebo has had his fair share of injuries throughout his career, so that is something to look at. But I can understand why he would want to take less hits. But if this play style works for you, then I think you need to go with that if you want to be paid. Because if you're going to be putting up wide receiver 2 type stats, then nobody's going to want to pay you that type of money. That's just the bottom line.
Oh yeah, no, I got to agree. I mean, if he's this unhappy and he's showing this much, dissatisfaction with the 49ers franchise, and you even threaten to sit if they're not going to trade him, you got to make sure you have the stats. I mean, he had a great season last year, but as you said, he doesn't want to be out of the league that quick, especially with a lot of guys who play a lot of those dual role positions like Deebo, taking a lot of extra hits, and that can severely shorten your career in the NFL. But it just dawned on me, maybe we could potentially see a Deebo Samuel and Jimmy G package deal potentially go, because 49ers fans aren't extremely happy with the way Jimmy G has been. Obviously not his best season this year, but definitely not his worst. I think Jimmy G could definitely be a lot worse with the situation that he has now, especially if Deebo goes. But my hot take, I think there might be a package deal there.
So, but that would mean he would be traded to a quarterback needy team. So where do you think Where specifically do you think he would go? I think one team would be the Panthers that comes to mind, but where do you think?
I mean, that was where I was going to lead to. I was going to say the Panthers. I mean, Sam Darnold, the starting quarterback as of right now for the Panthers. He's bounced around the league. He's been with multiple teams. Brian, he's been with your Jets for what, 2 years?
He was with the Jets, and he got traded to the Panthers for, I think, a couple of picks. I think it was like a third and second.
Yeah,
and then a couple this year as well that we're going to receive. But I think that was it. He's only been with the Panthers for one season there. He's only been with for like a solid 3 or 4 years.
He's been with the Panthers for about 1 year, and he's heading into year number 2. I mean, really hasn't done anything all that great. I think it's been just regular Sam Darnold playing more conservative ball. He's not really just lobbing it out downfield. If this package deal is to happen, I think Carolina would be one of the front running teams. They have the money and they need the room. They need a solid, reliable quarterback. And I think a change of scenery for Jimmy G, I think it would be a great move.
So let me ask you this. If you think Jimmy G and Deebo Samuel will be a good package deal sending to Carolina, what do you think San Francisco will receive back from them?
If anything, I would have to say, obviously, it would be a first round. It's got to be a first round. And if the Panthers are going to get rid of any players, I think a good trade in return would be Brian Burns.
Okay.
Brian Burns, one of the Panthers' more elite defensive ends. Panthers can get a stud of a end rusher, bump up the defense, and then I think the Panthers could either look around in the draft, see what they have. This isn't a very strong offensive draft, as we've talked about, but I do believe they could pick something out from there. And granted, it would potentially be a project pick if they were to take a quarterback, but I think that would be something that could benefit the Panthers years on.
Okay, I kind of like that. I wasn't really thinking Brian Burns. I feel like that guy is always a sleeper in the lead, one of the best defensive ends right there. Maybe Shaq Thompson could be another one that they could look at. 49ers are always a heavily defensive team.
Oh, yeah.
That relies heavily on their defense more than their offense to me. They really rely on that offense. They really rely on Jimmy G and Deebo in that deal. If they end up doing that package deal, I wonder how that deal will end up for them, as Trey Lance will most likely get the nod for the starting job next year. And I think if you're going to move on from Deebo, the 49ers, what they should do in their first round pick, even though it's towards the bottom of the draft, is to look maybe at another wide receiver. I just received actually word from Twitter that they are looking at the wide receiver for Ohio State, Chris Olivier, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And there was
or something.
It was like something like that. And there was another wide receiver from Virginia State. I can't really think of his name right now, but that's another one they just did a visit with. But yeah, I do agree with you that could be a possibility for the Panthers. It could be big for them, maybe a contender team.
Oh, absolutely. And if that goes through and, the 49ers do get Brian Burns, you got Brian Burns on the left and then Nick Bosa on the right.
Oh, geez, yeah.
That is a head-knocking front seven for the 49ers, and I think that will put them back in a lot of defensive prowess as they've typically had over the past few years. They've always been one of the stronger defensive teams in the league. So I think that kind of cements their spot up top in the top 3, I would say, top 3 defenses.
Yeah, I could kind of agree with you on that. NFC West is obviously a heavily big division with the Cardinals, with Kyler Murray, what he's done over there. And obviously the Seahawks are a rebuilding process after getting rid of Wilson and Wagner. They're 2 Pro Bowlers and Super Bowl champions. And obviously the Rams, who just won the Super Bowl this year. Basically did a lot of re-signage with all their players. Obviously letting go, I think the biggest one would be Austin Corbett would be the biggest one, and Andrew Whitworth, who retired. They are most likely, they can't really rely on the draft, as last year they got rid of Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. And obviously it worked out for them as they won a Super Bowl, but they obviously need to address the line a little bit more as they lost their top guard and their top OT. But yeah, I think it'll be good for the it could be good for both ways for the Panthers and Niners. I would like to see the Panthers. I would always like the Panthers how they played. I would like to see them getting back into the playoff picture. And it would be good for the 49ers too, as they love how they use their defense sufficiently. But yeah, I think it'll be good.
So I like the Panthers deal that you guys are talking about. I've been trying to research other teams that are quarterback needy and could also use a wide receiver. Among other teams, there could be also there's the Atlanta Falcons. They just traded away. They just traded away Matt Ryan, and they're in need of a wide receiver as well. Excuse me. There's also, this is an interesting one. This is a team that desperately needs a wide receiver one, and there's questions on if their current top guy is a wide receiver one, or it could develop into one. But what do you guys think of the Detroit Lions?
Yes, they do need a wide receiver. To be honest, they really need a lot over there. The Lions, I don't know, because I think Deebo, the way he's been using social media a little bit, he's giving a little bit of attitude, which is not really good for him on his part. I think that's starting to drawing teams away, but I think he wants to be with a winning team. I can see the Falcons, because the Falcons didn't finish off with a bad record.
The Falcons aren't a winning team.
Well, I know they're not a winning team. They didn't finish off with a bad record. But I don't know. I mean, those two teams, I feel like Deebo wouldn't really consider both of those teams because, if you look at the Falcons, you have Tom Brady in that division. If you look at the Detroit Lions, you have Aaron Rodgers in that division.
Yeah, obviously, but that's a weak Packers team after they just lost Devontae Adams, and they also lost Zadarius Smith on the defensive side of the ball. That's a team where I look at and I think that excuse me, that that Packers team really has a chance to actually miss the playoffs. I think the Vikings are the favorite in that division now without Devontae Adams and other pieces on that roster. Unless they were to make a trade for Deebo Samuel, that's a team where I look at and I say they're going to fall off the cliff, to quote a certain man who used to work for ESPN, at least for First Take. He's not on the show anymore, which I'm a little bummed about, but
I kind of agree with you and Nick with this. I feel like the Panthers would be a good fit for him, and I feel like the Packers would be a great fit for him. As Panthers hopefully can get back into the playoffs as they were some years back, and obviously the Packers have that reputation of going into the postseason every year as a no doubter. I think it'll be a good fit for just Deebo. I wouldn't say Jimmy G yet. I mean, it depends where Jimmy G is going to go, because there's not really a lot of quarterback need teams, obviously. But yeah, I think that'll be a great finish, a great fit for Deebo.
All right. So next, we talked a little bit about where Deebo should go, but what about the 49ers? What should they do? We'll talk about that next. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet.
You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Fans Only Sports Network. I'm Adam Wright, Nick Carlson, special guest Brian Mucker here with you tonight. And so we talked about how Deebo Samuel requested a trade and where he should go, basically. A lot of different teams he could go to. And, we talked about package deals with Jimmy. We talked about who they should give up, teams should give up for Samuel, all that kind of stuff. But what about the 49ers? What should they do? So the 49ers, they now have a massive hole to fill at the wide receiver 1 spot, barring that, if Brandon Ayuk could step up and fill that role, which he has shown some flashes in the past. But how do they fill this void at wide receiver now that Deebo Samuel is about to peace out?
I mean, looking at the draft coming up, the 49ers, typically a heavier team in the draft. They prefer the draft, or that's what they've shown anyway. The past few years, they've been really reluctant, and they've been really draft heavy. They haven't really done much in free agency over the past few years. I believe at least you've got to get some defensive help on the side of the ball through the draft. Maybe try and find a questionable wide receiver 2, kind of have them fight it out during the beginning stages of camp to see who really wants that number 1 spot. And if it's not looking favorable in the draft, which this year is going to be a very defensive heavy draft, I think they just got to look towards maybe a free agent, possible trade, see who's going to be available, who's coming up on the contract years, who's going to be out looking around, and see if any of those spots can be filled.
So what I can take from Deebo, if Deebo is going to be piecing out, yes, they can look at the draft. They've obviously met with Chris Olivier from Ohio State. They could obviously, I don't think he'll fall all the way down, but there's other wide receivers like Jameson Williams and Drake London from UNC in Alabama, or UNC, I think. I don't know where he was from. Those 3 wide receivers, top 3 wide receivers, could be one. And I know there's another one from Ohio State coming up. I forgot his first name, but I know his last name is Wilson. What I could also look at is a Twitter report came out as Deebo Samuel is not happy with his contract. Do some research, go into other teams, go to Tennessee, look at AJ Brown, see what his status is. Go to Washington, look at Terry McLaurin, see what his status is. I know this is kind of a long shot because they're division rivals, but DK Metcalf with the Seahawks, look at what his availability is. I know DK really wants out of there after the Seahawks are going to become a rebuilding team now, and Wilson after the departure of Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson. But I would more focus on teams that are outside the division, like Terry McLaurin and AJ Brown. I think those 2 have shown real good flashes as possible number wide receiver 1s. That can obviously fit in with Kyle Shanahan's coaching staff.
So there's a couple of directions that the 49ers could go into. They could look towards the draft and look toward, with whatever pick they get, they can look towards the back end of this wide receiver group and look for any guy to get. It's a little bit top heavy with wide receivers. In order to find a real impact guy, they might have to be drafting towards at least the middle of the draft, wherever Drake London or Jameson Williams or the Garrett Wilsons of the world fall. Excuse me. Or they could also go into free agency, and they can hit on, as a post-draft guy, they can go out and get Jarvis Landry. They haven't been in the sweepstakes for him. They haven't been in on him, and the Saints have, along with the Browns, who are interested in getting him back. But the 49ers could enter that sort of competition for him, and they could try and get him. He wouldn't be a real wide receiver 1. It would be kind of just him and Ayuk going back and forth. But that's a possibility. There's also Will Fuller, who is out there, but there's really not much out there. A real drastic option that they could go towards is they could look towards the trade market, dare I say, and kind of go talk to Tennessee and Seattle, who are having similar issues with their quarterback, with their wide receivers entering contract years. Say, well, we're willing to pay a guy, just our guy didn't want to be here anymore. So we're willing to, if you don't want to pay your guy, we will. So we'll flip you a second round pick and a first round pick next year, and we'll take AJ Brown. We'll take Terry McLaurin. We'll take, name the guy. We'll take DK Metcalf, even though that's very, very unlikely. But there's a couple of options. I think free agency is the most likely route that they're going to take, but they're in a tough spot.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I mean, maybe there's a wide receiver that we don't really know about that could fall in the second round, and they could use that to their advantage. I mean, I didn't even know that he was even a top wide receiver in the draft last year, but the Jets with Elijah Moore, look how that worked out. He looks like a number one from what I saw at the end of the year. When healthy, though, obviously.
Yeah, but last year's wide receiver class was much better. Elijah Moore was regarded a lot better than a lot of the wide receivers going in this draft. There's obviously, like I said, there's the Garrett Wilsons, Jamison Williams, there's the Drake Londons of the world, but it's top heavy. Past that, Chris Olave is hit or miss. There's a few players who are going to be drafted based on upside in the second round and possibly in the first round, because this offensive draft is so poor that there's going to be players who have no business being drafted in the first round being picked there because of just how weak this draft class is. There was a report coming in, or at least just a bold take by, I'm forgetting who it was, but whoever it is, I'll find them. They said if Davis Mills was in this draft class, that he would be drafted ahead of all of the all of the quarterbacks in this draft, and he would be taken ahead of all the quarterbacks in this draft, and he would go in the first round. In last year's draft, he was drafted in the fourth round. So that just tells you how weak this draft class is on the offensive side. And it's going to be really tough for the 49ers to look towards the draft, especially with the resources that they have in there.
So you're saying that Davis Mills will be drafted over Malik Willis, who had a great draft combine?
I do, yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I could see Kenny Pickett because he didn't really have as a good draft combine. They just gave a little scouting reports, and he would be the top pick quarterback in the draft, as he can throw great spirals and his hand size, which I do not understand, but like I do not understand why they had the scout report that, but you obviously have to have more than how big your hand is and how you can throw a football. You have to know what you're doing out on the field and what you're doing off the field. Malik Willis seems like he has that. With Mills, I've seen a little bit of flashes with that, but I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Mills, yes, I could agree with you on that. Mills would be falling in this first round, but I think he would fall a little bit lower than Malik Willis would.
All right. Well, we are getting a little bit off topic here, and that's the perfect time to get off topic because we are transitioning into Brian's favorite segment. We are finally going to talk about the Jets. This kid, if you know this kid, he will not shut up about his Jets. And lucky for him, they have two, not one, but two picks, not only in the first round, but in the top 10. We're going to talk about who they should pick next. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
And the pass is no sign yet.
You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Fans Only and Power 88. I'm Adam Wright, Nick Carlson, special guest Brian Mucker with you, and we are on to the guest segment. So Brian is our special guest, and Brian is a die-hard Jets fan. If you talk about the Jets with him, he'll go on for hours talking your ear off. And we have a segment just for him. This segment is made for this man. The New York Jets. So they have a lot of resources in this draft. So Brian, why don't you talk about their picks and who you think they should take?
So I've seen a lot of mock drafts on social media such as Twitter and Instagram, but if I want to look at the number 4 pick, I would either go after an edge or a cornerback, such as Ahmad Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, or Kayvon Thibodeau, I think his name is, from Oregon. I would love to have either or.
Thibodeau.
Obviously, I can't
Thibodeau.
have
The H is silent.
Oh, okay, got it. Obviously, you can't have both. With either or, I think if they can't get Ahmad Sauce Gardner, look at Derek Stingley from LSU. He was a great big part in the Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson era over there in LSU as a sophomore, I believe. And yeah, I mean, maybe like with the number 4 pick, the number 4 pick's a little bit stumped. It's been changed multiple times on social media. With the number 10 pick, I could see them looking at the wide receiver position, looking at offense, such as Drake London. I know they've been heavily interested in him. Not so much with Jameson Williams because of that torn ACL he had last year. And a little bit with Garrett Wilson, not so much though. But I think they're looking more towards the number 10 pick with Drake London. I think that you would either have to take an edge or a cornerback with the number 4 pick. And I obviously got word, as I get notifications from the Jets, that they've recently re-signed defensive end, former Super Bowl champion defensive end Vinny Curry to a 1-year deal. He's getting a little up there in age, but that helps them up there with their edge rush. They've also recently talked to former Saints outside linebacker Quan Alexander with a notable, hopefully, signing with them. So if they could I would say if you get Quan, leave Thibodeau out, address the cornerback position with your number 4 pick. I think the number 10 should be permanently addressed with wide receiver with Drake London.
Okay. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Jets in this draft?
I mean, in all honesty, I think Brian hit it right on the head. I mean, I really see them honing in on everybody Brian just mentioned, but I think the draft, I think one of their top picks is going to be Joe Douglas. He's been a real solid lineman at Oregon. And honestly, I think they grab him out of the draft and they get a few of the guys Brian just mentioned. I think the Jets flip the script. They're no longer going to be one of the weaker teams in the AFC. And I think they'll become, I wouldn't say a powerhouse just yet, just to see how these rookies and trades play out. But I think they'll be a decent middle of the pack, fighting for that wild card or maybe just squeaking in.
For once, I think the Jets are trending in the right direction with all the picks that they have. So this is a team that has that they have pieces with, Elijah Moore at wide receiver. They also have, and they overpaid for him, but they have Corey Davis for a wide receiver too, among other guys. And they also have a decent front seven. They have a quarterback who showed some promise as the season went on. He started off really rough. He threw 4 picks against my Patriots a couple of weeks ago, or not a couple of weeks during the beginning of the season. But who I think they should pick, I think so. It's not an option. You take Ahmad Gardner at your number 4 pick. He's going to last that. He's not going to last that long. It's very rare that you see a corner being drafted that high, in the top 5, but Gardner is an exception when you look at him. So you take him at number 4, and let's say, so I see Kayvon Thibodeau slipping in a lot of mock drafts, and he was a guy who was regarded as a potential number 1 pick. And now we look at him, and he could fall to number 10. If he falls that far, you take Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'm sorry, I look at wide receiver on this team, and am I wrong for thinking that they really don't need? They're not that desperate for a number 1 or for a wide receiver. I just think Elijah Moore is that. I think he could be that guy. And in his second season, going into his sophomore year, there's a lot of wide receivers who have decent years their first year, and then they're in their second year, they make a massive leap, especially with a quarterback also going into his sophomore season. I don't really think that's as big a need as we might think.
See, I'm also thinking on that too. What they've done in the offseason, they took basically a page out of the Patriots book. What the Patriots did last offseason with Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith, what the Jets did for the receiving help is that they went out, they finally addressed that tight end position after almost 10 plus years of not having it since Dustin Keller in 2010, signing Tyler Conklin, the former Minnesota starting tight end, and CJ Uzomah, a Super Bowl not Super Bowl champion, a former Super Bowl contestant with the Bengals.
Super Bowl participant.
Well, yeah. Participant, yeah.
Doesn't sound as good, but still,
yeah,
he made a Super Bowl.
He made a Super Bowl. He has promise with the receiving help. Now, obviously, you mentioned Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. There might be a sleeper here as he is showing a little bit progression to his game during the offseason. And that is a guy who they drafted some years back. He's from Baylor. I think you know him. Wide receiver Denzel Mims. He is not really shown on the field as they didn't really play him as much. He could be a nice number 3. And you also forgot to mention Braxton Berrios. What a year he had last year.
I don't need to mention him. He was a special teams guy.
I don't know. He had a pretty good year. I mean, if you saw what he did against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards, that looked pretty good.
Led him to a great victory, didn't he?
Oh, well, that was the defense on that. That was the defense on that side, buddy. I can't really.
Okay. Well, that you just brought up what I wanted to hammer at. This being such a defensive-heavy draft, I think you guys have 4 or 5 picks in the top 40 for this draft.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, do you think the Jets go all out defensively? Because that secondary does need work. Maybe if you guys can add in an interior lineman, I don't see that being too bad. But definitely the secondary and the defensive back core, from what I've seen this last season, I think that is the Jets' big problem.
If Thibodeau lasts that far, I don't think it's not an option. You take that guy.
Oh, you have to. If you don't, Jets fans, I can see them rioting already.
I can see Joe Douglas. He's a very smart man when it comes to draft. As you saw, he spent a couple years in Philadelphia winning the Super Bowl with them. Yep. He built Philly basically. So he obviously knows what he's doing. But yes, I could maybe see him going up to Thibodeau more. I would like Gardner and Thibodeau a lot. They've also addressed a lot in free agency with the pass rushing with signing Solomon Thomas, Vinnie Curry, Jacob Martin from Tennessee. I love the way he gets out of that standoff and goes right after the quarterback immediately without even the lineman even touching him. They've also addressed a little bit, not too much with the secondary, re-signing LaMarcus Joyner back. Hopefully he stays healthy this time. But the Jets also have the youngest defensive back positions in, I think, the entire league. They've been all sophomores and third-year players now, with Bryce Hall with Virginia, Brandon Echols from Kentucky, and who's the other one? Ashton Davis coming from California, who they drafted a little bit ago. They've also signed DJ Reed coming from Seattle to New York, and they've signed a former Super Bowl champion that helped Tom Brady's Bucks get to the Super Bowl on the defensive side, Jordan Whitehead, who replaced Marcus May. We obviously know where Marcus May ended up. He went to New Orleans, but they've addressed what they need on offense and what they need on defense in free agency. I think that they could top it off by getting Gardner and Thibodeau with the draft.
Yeah, if they like I said, if Thibodeau lasts that long, but like I said, Ahmad Gardner is going to last till pick 4, and that's a slam dunk number 4 pick that you take. That's not even a question. The only question is who you take with number 10. And at number 10, and if Thibodeau lasts that long, then that's not a question either. But if they go with defense and they stick to that, even if Thibodeau's off the board, what about Devin Lloyd? What do you think about him being drafted?
I feel like he's a very sleeper-looking pick right there. DeMarcus Walker could be maybe another one they look at. I don't think he's ever visited with the Jets, and I don't think Devin Lloyd ever did either. I know Thibodeau has, but he could be a sleeper for them. And if you look at the picks 4 through 10, you look at the Panthers, they need help on wide receiver, offensive line, and maybe quarterback. Falcons, they are looking to add a little bit on their defensive side with wide receiver, though, on the other side. But they're looking at cornerback, defensive back. If Gardner's off the board, they're going to look to Derek Stingley with that pick. The Steelers, they might be looking for a quarterback as well, maybe drafting Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, one of those two. I think that the Jets can get this done. I think they can get Gardner, and I think Thibodeau will fall to number 10.
So you say can. You know if he goes number 4, then he's going to last till 4. Gardner. So it's not a can thing, it's a will, unless they're incompetent. Also Thibodeau, I want to believe that he'll fall that far. I don't. There's a very good chance he doesn't, and then that the Giants snag him.
The Giants are the only team in that span picks with 4 through 10 I'm really worried about. The Giants are obviously, they need a lot too over there, as the Jets do too. But I think the Giants obviously need more than that. They need everything.
How about the Lions? What if they were to go number 2 with Thibodeau? Do you think that's a possibility? Even though he's been slipping, but that talent is just very hard to pass up.
I don't think it is, because Aiden Hutchinson has proven that he's a top 5 pick from Michigan.
So wait. But then who does Jacksonville take? If the Lions are taking Hutchinson, then that means Jacksonville passed on him.
I was going to say maybe offensive line for them.
So Evan Neal. So your number 1 pick in this draft is Evan Neal.
I would say either Evan Neal or Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions also need a little help on offensive line too, so I could see them also going after Evan Neal or the other offensive lineman. I really can't pronounce his name, but it's like Iquanu or whatever his name is. But I could see him going after that player. He kind of slipped up there a little bit. He was on the bottom 10, but now he's up in the top 5 now.
So back to back years of them going their top 4 pick taking a tackle. So they go with Penny Sewell, who's emerged as one of the best left tackles in the game. Then you go left tackle again and take Evan Neal and put him at right tackle.
Listen, the Jets have done that already. They've done it with, even though it's different positions, guard and offensive tackle. They did it with Becton during the I think it was Burrow's draft. So I think it was 2019 they got Becton. And they did it last year with Wilson. They made a very surprising move last year by trading the number 23rd pick and getting the number 15 or 19, I believe, getting Elijah Vera Tucker. I thought he would be off the board quite soon, but the Jets obviously wanted him, so they did that. I could see the Lions doing that too, back-to-back years, and the Giants maybe.
But finding a competent left tackle, that's extremely hard. but a right tackle is not really. That's something you could probably address, in the later rounds, because it's hard to find right tackles, but it's not really hard to find a right tackle. Did I say? You know what I meant, but Nick, I understand you have a hot take.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, obviously the Lions getting the shorter end of the stick between the last quarterback trade, Goff for Stafford. I think they might take Pickett. Take Pickett, keep him as a backup for this year. He can learn under Goff. Granted, he might not be the best execution man, but I'm sure he can teach the rookie a lot of things about the NFL and how to read the defense as an NFL quarterback, even though Goff has not been the best for that in recent years. I really think the Lions might go with Pickett, and just in case Goff isn't doing it, throw him out there. What else do they have to lose? It's better than letting Goff go out there and overthrow receivers.
You're placing a lot of faith in this draft class to be saying that they'll be taking at number 2 a quarterback. That's interesting.
It is very interesting. Yeah, Pickett or Malik Willis, either one of them works.
Yeah.
But
I think if it had to be the 2, I think it would be Pickett for the Lions, but we don't know. It's a hot take, so I could be completely wrong.
Let's just also be honest. We're just looking for reasons to believe that Thibodeau will fall to number 10.
Yeah,
it's very hard. Yeah, it is, but it is, but what, Brian?
It is, but even though, like you mentioned, if Thibodeau is taken off the board, like let's say he gets snagged by the Giants or the Lions, the Jets could also look at Devin Lloyd. They could look at DeMarcus Walker. They could look at those edge rushers. They could take one of those guys. Those guys will be falling maybe mid-draft, lower class, at least.
I just think there's a high chance that Thibodeau goes to either the Giants or the Lions, and we're forgetting the fact that that not only do the Jets have 2 top 10 picks, the Giants do too, and they're going to be addressing 2 different needs. And I have a hard time believing that that the front 7 isn't one of those top 2 needs. I just think they're going to go that route, and that's going to be the way that they wind up going.
Okay. Maybe you could be right. We don't know. We will find out next Thursday.
Have the audience comment down below any of our social medias. Let us know your choice. Where will Thibodeau fall? Where will he fall, and who will your top 3 be in the draft? Exactly.
What is this draft order going to pan out as? There have been so many different predictions. This has been like the most nothing is wrong until you are wrong when we find out exactly what the picks are. But this is one of those drafts where it's very, very hard to predict what the top 10 is going to be. And it's going to be very interesting seeing that top 10, because this is obviously a very, very top heavy draft in most positions that aren't defense. But guys, you guys have any other thoughts before we end the show tonight?
I do not. I was just happy to be here.
Unless we make this a 2-hour show, we can have Brian keep talking about his Jets.
I know that'll be like a marathon, man. That'll be like 3 hours. You don't be careful what you wish for. As somebody who has to listen to this kid talk all the time, good Lord. Once you have him going on the Jets, when you put the dime in the jukebox, you have to hear the whole song. It's one of those things. All right. Well, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. Be sure to tune in to us live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 on Twitter and Facebook through Fans Only Sports Network. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Over and out.